of his book here, which
Right.
I'll hold up.
Right.
2,000 to 3,000 Palestinians were made refugees during the second stage of the flight. Here's the book in front of you,
Yeah.
page 256. Can you read what the sentence says?
Well, let me read you what I say in my book. In some areas, Arab commanders.
Please
I'm quoting
don't read
from
the whole
Morris. No,
paragraph.
I'm just reading. In some, let me put the context. Chomsky says that he says Morris does not believe that any Arab leaders told the Palestinians to leave. And I say, in some areas, I quote from Morris, in some areas, Arab commanders ordered the
I'm not
villages to
disputing that.
evacuate to clear the ground for military purposes to prevent surrender. More than half a dozen villages, etc., were abandoned during these months as a result of such orders. Elsewhere in East Jerusalem and in many villages around the country, the Arab commanders ordered women, old people, and children to be sent away out of harm's way. Indeed, psychological preparation for the removal of the dependents had begun in 47-48, when the Arab High Command and the Arab League had periodically endorsed such a move when contemplating the future of Palestine. And I say, therefore, Chomsky is simply wrong when he says that there's no evidence, and he says, again at another point, nobody today believes that any of the refugees were told to leave. And so I dispute that by quoting Morris himself.
You seem to have an obsession with Mr. Chomsky, but he's not here. I'm here. Let's look at the next
Actually,
sentence.
I thought I was going to be debating Chomsky today.
Let's look at the
I
next
was surprised
sentence.
to
Please, Mr.
have you
Dershowitz,
be here
this
today.
is serious.
I agree with you.
Read the next sentence. Morris estimates, in your book, I have it right in front of me, the
Right.
next sentence.
Morris estimates that between 2,000 and 3,000 Arabs fled their homes during this phase of the Arab-initiated fighting.
Okay, can you please read what Mr. Morris wrote?
Well, no, you're
Please
talking about
read what
one.
Please read what he wrote.
If I have the whole book, I will find for
No, you
you,
won't.
if you want to take
Norm
time.
Finkelstein,
that
can you, if
two
you want the
to 3,000 people
you
led
can
during
read
this
it.
phase.
Can you
In
read
fact,
the sentence?
Okay, I'm looking at page 256 of Benny Morris's book, Righteous Victims, A
Right.
History of the Zionist-Arab Conflict.
He's referring to phase 2 now, the same one as you. Go ahead.
And you're talking about right
All
over here.
together. Yeah.
Altogether, about 200,000 to 300,000 Arabs fled their homes during the second stage
Big
of the
difference
Exodus.
between 2 and 3,000 and 2 and 300,000. Now, you could check this many times, Mr. Dershowitz, but you're really going to have to pay the $10,000.
No.
And I hope you allow me to I hope you allow me to earmark it for Janine. I would like to give it to Janine.
Let's be sure what the context is of this.
I know the context.
We're talking about a variety
This is not
of
the OJ
phases.
trial. This is not
You want-
the
now-
OJ
now
trial.
this is not ad
We're not
hominem
going to
either,
play a
right?
game.
Well, just
We're
one-
not playing a game now.
We're
Is
not
your
playing a
point
game.
that you're citing that what you're saying, Norm Finkelstein, is in Alan Dershowitz's book, The Case for Israel? He says 2 to
3,000, and it's 2 to 300,000.
your response to that.
I
Professor
argue
Dershowitz.
that 700,000 Arabs.
Don't change the subject,
that's
Mr.
not the subject.
Dershowitz.
Changing the subject.
We're
I
talking
argue
about
that
phase 2, April through June.
700,000 Arabs.
Please don't play this game.
Obviously, the phrase 2 to 3,000 Arabs refers either to a sub-phase or is a typographical error.
This is why
If you look
lawyers
the
have
whole-
a bad
if you
reputation. Because you're playing a
read
game
the
now.
whole- read-
I've read the book twice. In
But
fact,
do
Mr.
I ever
Dershowitz-
dispute that 700?
Mr.
Do I
Dershowitz,
ever
in
dispute
fact,
that hundreds of
Mr.
thousands
Dershowitz, in
of
fact,
people
I've read
left?
the book 6 times because I read Joan Peters 4 times. So if you add the 4 times to Joan
does she
Peters,
make this point?
with the
By the
2
way,
for
does
you, it's 6 times.
Does she make this point?
No.
Of course she doesn't make
Okay.
this point. Now,
Let's go to the other
let me
full-
get-
I'm going to
no, no,
interrupt for
I
a
need to
second.
make
I'm going to
this
interrupt
point.
because stations have to
Okay.
make their point,
But I
which
say
is they have to
700,000.
identify.
So
They have to
obviously-
identify themselves. We'll come back, and if you can stay with us for the show, we will continue this discussion. And our next guest, will ask him to wait, and we will do an interview after the program. I think this is too important. We're talking to Alan Dershowitz. His new book is called The Case for Israel. He is debating Norm Finkelstein. His books, The Holocaust Industry and Image and Reality of the Israel-Palestine Conflict. Stay with us. You are listening to Democracy Now! That's the late Frank Lowe on saxophone. I'm Amy Goodman, and we're talking with Professor Alan Dershowitz. His new book is called The Case for Israel. Mario Cuomo writes on the back of it, Alan Dershowitz's detailed and penetrating analysis of the issues that fuel the continuing war in Israel should be read by everyone. Norman Finkelstein's book, The Holocaust Industry, has a recommendation on the back by Raoul Hilberg, who is the leading Holocaust historian in this country. And he says, when I read Finkelstein's book at the time of its appearance, I was in the middle of my own investigations. I came to the conclusion he was on the right track. I refer now to the part of the book that deals with the claims against Swiss banks, and I'm jumping ahead. He says, I am by no means the only one who in the coming months or years will totally agree with Finkelstein's breakthrough. Okay.
So let me focus on the 2,000 or 3,000. This is such an obvious point when you think about it for a second. What is the context I'm arguing? I'm arguing that lots and lots of Arabs, in contradistinction to what Chomsky said, were told to leave by their Arab commanders. Obviously, it's in the interest of that argument to maximize the number who would leave. Only an idiot would deliberately minimize the number who's leave.
Let's refrain from ad hominem attacks.
No. I'm talking about myself.
Okay.
I'm talking about myself now.
Okay.
I would have been an idiot had I used 2,000 when the actual number was 200 to 300. If you wanted to make an accusation, you would say, instead of saying 200 to 300, he said 400,000 to 500,000. Remember the argument. The argument I'm making is that lots of the Palestinian refugees who left as the result of orders from their leaders during this period of time. So my incentive, if we take Mr. Finkelstein, would be to exaggerate the number. Now he accuses me of reducing the number by 100-fold. Obviously, there are only two possible explanations for that.
For factual errors.
Why would anyone make a factual error that would hurt their position?
Mr. Dershowitz,
it's the
with all due
stupidest
respect,
allegation.
Mr. Dershowitz,
Right?
with all due respect, I cannot understand for the life of me why someone with your reputation and with your accomplishments would cobble together a fraud. That, to me, is the most perplexing question.
Let me ask you a direct
Leaving
question.
aside,
Let me ask you a direct question.
Let me just say something. We only have 10 minutes. We want to go to content.
I do, but I want to ask one direct question. Am I right or am I wrong that it would serve the interest of my argument to overstate rather than to understate that figure?
There are no arguments in your book. Your book is a collection of fraud, falsification,
let me give you the argument. Well, let me set out the argument. So this is an answer on the merits. Here's the argument.
I don't want to discuss
and we're going to close both mics
Here's
here.
the argument.
We're closing both microphones, okay? We're going to go through this in a civilized way over the next 10 minutes. You have laid out a challenge, Professor Dershowitz, on Scarborough Country, the program on MSNBC. You said if anyone can find a factual error in the book, we're not talking spelling errors, that you will give $10,000. Sorry.
Yes, as I said, I'm prepared to do that. Now,
okay, now I'm going to interrupt.
Right.
This is a major challenge.
It is.
You've put it out on television. Norman Finkelstein, you have laid out one error. Whoever's interested served. Who's ever interested served. You did respond.
No.
You said 2,000 to 3,000, quoting citing Benny Morris, the Israeli historian. In fact, he said 200,000 to 300,000 Arabs. Now,
and let me make the point that I do make an argument. Here's the argument I make. I make the argument that the issue is a complex one of the refugees, and that in fact many of the refugees of the 700,000.
But you're citing Benny Morris.
Wait. Of course.
And he made a different point than you did.
He made a point that strengthens my argument.
But it's wrong in your book. Whether or not it strengthens, whether or not it serves your argument.
Let me be very clear. I do make an argument. My argument is a very serious one. My argument is that many of the Palestinians were told to leave by their commanders. If in fact 200,000 were told to leave instead of 2,000, that strengthens my argument considerably. That is an argument that I make. If the book says 2,000 to 3,000, there are only two explanations. Either it is a typographical error, or I have to check the book